All right, good stuff on getting your body scan done. So we're gonna go through every single thing on the page. I'll try to give as much detail as I can so that you get exactly what you need from it from now to understand what you've done in the past and obviously how you're gonna go to change the results. So of course, on the top left of the page is the date and the time. The time's obviously very important because you want to recreate exactly how you did the scan beforehand. So whether you ate breakfast or you trained, ideally you wouldn't eat or you wouldn't train before a scan, because it obviously changes the results slightly, but the main thing is the consistency. So if you train before this one, train before the next one. Of course, name, height, weight on there. Ideally you would add a kilo to, because essentially we've said this is your weight without clothes on, but they've factored in a kilo of clothing. So weight, again, is the smallest amount of detail we even want from this thing, but I understand people like to understand that. So for example, if it says 100, you with clothes on weigh 101 kilos. Age, gender, pretty self-explanatory. So we're going to go down to the your body composition section, and we're going to start from the left-hand side. So of course, this is more about the muscle side of things. The way that it works, it gives you a range, that little small bracketed section, specific to you, your age, your body weight, and your sex. Okay, so this is again, it's an ideal range. It's quite broad, and it will say that you're obviously within it, so balanced usually, or you might be high, or you might be low. Again, if you tend to have, for example, high muscle mass on this side, you'll tend to have high quality of the protein in the middle, and then of course hold that body water in there, so you'll also have high body water. In the grand scheme of things, and through scientific research, more muscle is better. It's as simple as that. And more muscle will weigh more, so your weight is going to be reflective of that. The reason we want more muscle in a generic way is just so that our basal metabolic rate is higher, we're obviously stronger, and it usually means that if we can keep our muscle high and drop our body fat down, then of course our positive markers are going to be there. So of course, check your range out, see if it's high within the range, and ideally again, a baseline. Don't get too addicted to what's here. You just want to be able to tweak it so that you can get the results that you want, but this is again, just a measurement. Going to the middle section, we have body fat mass. That's a kilo amount. So it tells you with your body and with all the measurements that it's obviously got, where kilos wise, it is in that range. If you go below that, subcutaneous fat mass, again in kilos, and then also as a percentage, it's directly relative. So subcutaneous is more the superficial, the palpable fat, whereas visceral is more of the internal around organs, and obviously they're directly related to your future disease risk. So that's again in kilos, but then also as a percentage of your overall weight. We've got visceral fat mass, and again then percentage, which is just there. The main thing with all this, because you're probably thinking about what are these numbers, what about the range, is it in a good spot? It's about making sure that you take them, especially when it comes to the fat side of things. If it's outside of your healthy range, you want to bring it inside the healthy range and just reduce that down, whilst also trying your best to get muscle to a higher amount. Visceral fat area, again, depending on your age, well, it's always an important factor, but depending on your age, it will be more important. So visceral fat area, and then if you go up to number 11, so visceral fat area is number 9, visceral fat mass is number 8, and visceral fat level, which is just a general way of explaining it, they're obviously your internal markers, so around your organs. So that's the thing that we really want to drop down as low as possible. Number 10 says total body fat percentage. That is a combination of both your visceral and your subcutaneous. Okay, and it will obviously give you a range. I believe men on this are 15 to 20% and females are 20 to 30%. Again, completely different needs approach, physiological markers, secondary sex characteristics will come into play with that, and obviously hormonal importance there. Long story short, you just want to be able to get it within a healthy range, ideally in the middle, and if you're not there, work towards getting it there. If we go to number 11, visceral fat level, I explained that before. This is the one that most people look at and they go, okay, it's simple, it's a number, and it says balanced or optimal or above. You just want to make sure that's going in the right direction. I don't usually dabble too much into number 12 and 13 as far as intracellular and extracellular fluid. However, you can of course change to the back or go into the app and it'll explain a little bit more about those side of things. Number 14 and 15, the BMR and the TE are very, very important, and something that I think is the best part about these scans, how it takes all the information and gives you this information. because I haven't seen it anywhere else. And that's what I'm going to get into in a second, because that ideally is the thing that you'll be able to use and manipulate to get the results you want after this test. We'll jump to number 16 and 17, the bio-age and the BWI score. That is the way that it just explains it's just giving you, people love this by the way, it just paints a picture of where your body's age is at in comparison to your real age. And of course, the Bio-Wellness Index, they've got their own little calculation algorithm, whatever you want to call it, to give you a baseline to represent your overall health, instead of just having waist to hip ratio or some kind of outdated like BMI markers. It kind of takes into consideration a little bit more instead of being too general. The way I explain that section to people, this one on here says 7.7, is if you were to be in an exam and get 77%, you'd be pretty happy. Okay. Again, if you were to get 65, you'd be okay. You passed, but you want to improve it. So try to relate it. I've just seen people get 8s or 8.5, and they're kind of disappointed in themselves. But 85% on an exam is really, really good. And obviously, trying to reflect back to the fact that it's a general marker, and we need to be able to kind of get that moving forward. Just improve that moving forward. If you go down to the middle section, you'll notice that it has a segmental analysis. Sorry, it's a Monday. It's obviously got balance top to bottom and up balance left to right. You may have heard of different body shapes. This is a way that it kind of paints a picture for you. So ideally, we're balanced. But if you naturally have more fat deposition to your bottom half, then that'll obviously probably show unbalanced. Left to right, really interesting, because it could be from an injury. For example, if I've got a much bigger right arm than my left arm, might have had a left nerve problem, lack of nerve flow, might have injured myself. A small difference is a small difference, okay? Don't stress that too much. If there's a vast difference, we might want to do a rescan or go, hey, why has this happened? You might go, oh yeah, I actually had an injury, but I didn't really use that side for quite a long time. That makes sense. I need to work on this side to get balanced out a little bit more. So it does paint a bit of a different picture for you. It's got abdominal circumference, obviously an important one. Waist hip ratio, which again is a measurement. It's a relatively important one, but it's not something to just get obsessed with and go down that route. And yeah, kind of paints a picture for you of the balance of side to side. Ideally, it's pretty neutral and pretty close. So down the bottom, your nutrition section, we have 21, which says calories, 22 protein, 23 carbs, and 24 fat. They are your macronutrients. And when I say the numbers before them, you should know that they're just marked little subsections. And this is what that BMR and the TEE, which is number 14 and 15, relate to. And that's why I wanted to come back to this section. So your basal metabolic rate is the base amount of calories your body needs to just operate effectively and consistently. So imagine it's a certain amount of fuel in your body, and that's how it kind of burns through that. The amount of calories it burns through at rest. I got there. And there's a reason why that's very important. Your TEE is your total energy expenditure based on that amount, okay? So if you were to just be going on an average day and your metabolism, your cogs are just kind of firing along, that is how many calories you would burn in a day. Okay, so we utilize that information, which before was really, really technical to get. You had to do all the calculations and stuff, but the machine just spits it out for you based on your muscle mass, fat mass, and other factors. We go down to that section where it says calories. So whether you've put fat loss, muscle gain, or optimal health will influence the amount of calories it says you need, okay? Because the plan is we want to get above your BMR so your body can operate effectively. What tends to happen is if we undereat, because sometimes it's really easy to think less is best if we want to lose, you create, what actually happens, long-term undereating creates a really inefficient system, and it actually drops our metabolic rate down. And I know that sounds contradictory, but it's usually why you'll have some people that go, I'm just training so hard and I'm eating nothing and nothing's changing. I'm not going in the right direction. But they're exhausted and they probably look terrible because their body's just craving nutrients and craving a consistent, healthy approach to food, diet, and obviously exercise. So that tends to be a consistent approach when people want to lose, they just cut everything. I'll explain a few little things later as well, as far as, you know, fasting and why that long term is beneficial for some people instead of just a short term benefit. And then your TEE is, if you want to maintain, you just try and eat around your TEE, which is obviously that number 15 on here. If we want to lose, we create a deficit, and a consistent deficit, which is why if you did put fat loss, you'll notice the number is above your BMR, but below your TEE, usually at a halfway point, depending on other factors like how often you said you train and the type of training that you do. If you wanted to maintain, it'll be pretty much exactly the same or within a range. And if you wanted to gain, you would have a surplus. Seems pretty self-explanatory. The important part is how we break those nutrients down to get into the body to obviously get the results and the type of training we're doing. So protein, for the majority, I've seen this at 30% because that tends to be a healthy marker of a good balance of protein. Depending on the style of training you do, the results you want, and how consistently you're training, that tends to alter the carbohydrates and fat. So if you're training more, and if you're doing more hypertrophy or muscle-based work, it'll probably say you want more carbs, okay? Because you need to replenish the stores that you're putting in to then have the energy to burn that out. For the average, it's usually between, say, 30 and 45, mixing and matching through there. Fats obviously go between 25 and 40% as well. Just to note, carbohydrates are not only bread, pasta, and rice, okay? That's not how carbohydrates, they're processed carbohydrates. They're the least beneficial and effective carbohydrates. They are still carbohydrates, but ideally you'd want to get ones from whole foods. Fats obviously are related to the glowing, your eyes, your nails, everything that really, your hormones, your nerves as well. So fats with protein are the outside of nerves. So if you think about firing well, feeling energetic, looking good, that's what fats, real good fats, are related to. As a quick change up, instead of going, oh, I need to drop my carbs here and I need to do my fats over here and getting all bajiggity about it, most of the time, if you slightly up your protein, the other two will balance out a little bit. So if you focus on just increasing your protein, whether it's from a natural source, from a protein source, or from a meat source, and maybe even a vegan protein source, you'll notice those other things tend to balance out a little bit. I usually advise that people eat 4 to 6 smaller meals a day because it tends to be more consistent, and I feel the best with that, and most of my patients/clients feel the best with that, just so you can have a consistent feeding approach to your engine instead of going up and down. You'll notice that there's a section down the bottom of your supplement recommendations. That's just what the machine spits out. Most of them are just natural sources. I don't dabble into this side of things. I understand it, but I don't dabble into it because ideally, for the majority of people, if we lock in the other 90 to 95% of life, we'll be able to get the benefits without supplementation. And I can't really advise you do that. The supplementation side, you can go see a professional. Sometimes even going to the local health food store or supplement store, they can be extremely knowledgeable and really help you with things to boost up. The one that most people ask about is a protein source. Personally, I usually tell people to get a vegan protein just because that's the one that feels best for me. And it obviously tends to feel most beneficial for the gut for most people as well, instead of that kind of heavy whey or casein based protein. Get some extra advice, see what works for you, make sure you feel good doing it. But doing that as well tends to up the protein for most people, like I said before. Other than that, that's pretty much the breakdown I like to give, and then obviously there's individualized questions and answers. What I said before about the fasting was more of a long-term approach. So for the majority of people, if they're overeating or over macro consuming in certain sections, what fasting does, other than actually just helping physiological markers just settle, is it drops your overall caloric intake across the board. So you want to look at the average of a week, a month, a few months. You don't want to just look at that one day and go, oh, I've eaten bugger all here. You want to look at the week and then go, oh, okay, I've seen what that's done, and as an average, it's now averaged out. And most things, whether it's keto, fasting, low carb, all those kind of things, tend to just drop our caloric intake as a spread, and that's when the consistency occurs. So people feel, keto's better than this and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, what it's doing is creating this shift consistently for you. It just happens to be an outcome that works for you. So do your best to try and research those bits and pieces, ask me questions. Hopefully this all makes sense, but remember, this is a baseline. You will ideally retest. Just play with your body in an approach that it's yours, tweak things, see what works best for you. Energy, fat loss, more muscle, better results, more strength. It's yours, tinker with it, retest it, measure it, and improve it.